Hello there, and welcome to the next video in the Jedi 101 series, based on my book, Your First Step into a Larger World, an introduction to walking the Jedi Path. If this is the first video you're watching, check out the Jedi 101 playlist on this channel to see the introduction and the previous videos and get yourself caught up. And if this is your first video, welcome. I thank you for your support. So, without further ado, we've got a lot to read today. Chapter 4, Compassion in Your Sphere of Influence. Compassion is one of those words that can have many interrelated meanings. Many see compassion as an emotion. As a Jedi, we are mindful of our emotions, but they do not rule us, even when that emotion is compassion. Even saying this, compassion is central to a Jedi's life, but not compassion the emotion, but rather compassion the attitude, which is in turn expressed as compassion in action. It has been my experience that compassionate actions are the most worthwhile. Where attitudes of the dark side, such as fear, anger, hate, and greed, lead to suffering, the attitudes of the Force, such as non-attachment, calmness, selflessness, and compassion, lead to the cessation of suffering. It is this desire to lessen the suffering in others that is the root of Jedi compassion. To better the lives of those around us, we must understand the Jedi concept of our sphere of influence. Our sphere of influence is the area within which we can affect change. While our sphere of influence becomes larger and smaller, depending on circumstance, environment, and ability, we must not forget that each Jedi is at the center of their sphere of influence. Because of this, if we are to effect positive change in the world, we must first better ourselves. It is this striving for the best possible version of ourselves and the training involved in getting there that allows us to operate as Jedi in the world of the everyday. Applying compassion within our sphere of influence should be guided by a strong moral center. I would suggest that a moral code that is specific in nature but very general in application is superior than one that is general in nature and specific in application. Absolutist thinking that takes the form of a Jedi should always or a Jedi should never fails to take into account the circumstances and environment in which a decision has to be made and an action taken. A Jedi approach is a nuanced approach, and we understand that what may be the right thing to do in one situation would be the wrong thing to do in another, and vice versa. One of the guides to operating compassionately within our sphere of influence is an alternate Jedi code, called within the Jedi community the Jedi Creed or the Skywalker Code. It first appeared in the young reader's book around the time of the release of The Phantom Menace, and found its way into other Star Wars media. It reads, Jedi are the guardians of peace in the galaxy. Jedi use their powers to defend and protect, never to attack others. Jedi respect all life in any form. Jedi serve others rather than rule over them for the good of the galaxy. Jedi seek to improve themselves through knowledge and training. While applicable to fictional Jedi, there is much here that applies to being a Jedi in the real world. The respect for all life is central to understanding how we should act within our sphere of influence. While as Jedi we seek for our influence to be positive, if it is not grounded in respect, it can be a negative influence indeed. Respect for other people can be expressed by accepting them just the way they are. We do not seek to mitigate or erase aspects of others that are part of their identity, especially if they are not aspects which we ourselves share. We respect that the experiences of others may be quite different than our own experiences, even if we find ourselves in the same environment. Our experience and perceptions in the center of our sphere of influence will not be shared by all those within it. Compassion will prevent the insistence that we are alike where it counts without respecting and addressing the differences. This is an attitude that only comes from a place of privilege, and it is something that Jedi should be mindful of. The experience of a person that is subject to oppression is often due to a trait that matters very much to them, perhaps an immutable aspect of their makeup which they cannot walk away from, and puts themselves in stark contrast from the people around them. Respect is based on a tolerance and advocacy of human rights. As Jedi, we will want the best possible just outcome for the greatest number of people, and this often happens by advocating for those that are being oppressed by those in power. The attitude we employ while working as Jedi is that of service. When we say that we do not rule over other people, we mean that we do not tell them how they should behave and act, or worse, making them act the way we think we should. Rather, the attitude of a Jedi can be summed up by asking the question, how can I help? It is listening to those who experience oppression that is the first step to understanding their experiences. Asking them how we can be of help instead of insisting on our own ideas of how things should be done allows us to act in such a way where we can offer real service and real help. If we are acting from a place of privilege, we must seek not to deny or defend our privilege, but rather seek out how we can best use it in the service of others while mitigating any unfair advantage it gives us. I am reminded of a photograph. It is a picture of three women of color protesting, and they are holding a sign with a quote by Desmond Tutu that reads, "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor." How very true this can be in the Jedi community. Some will advocate for not taking sides, not getting political, saying that it does not apply to the Jedi Path. However, if we are going to play more than lip service to the concept of justice, it most certainly does belong in the Jedi Path, and it may place Jedi in a minority position, but opposition to oppression in all its forms is the side of history a Jedi should find themselves on. Sometimes there really is a political position that is more aligned with the Jedi ideals than its counterpart. I am not saying there is all the time, but when it is, we should have the wisdom and discernment to put our Jedi attitude into action and create a Jedi outcome. An outcome that is just, an outcome that defends others, an outcome that demonstrates respect, an outcome that shows a Jedi was here. A Jedi did this thing. Through making themselves better, the world is a better place. Although, in most circumstances, being kind is an admirable trait, one should not mistake kindness for compassion. While kindness is often a compassionate course of action, there are times when kindness can do harm. It takes wisdom and discernment to recognize when this would be the case. If you are practicing the Jedi Path sincerely, this discernment will come to you in time by applying the pillars of Jedi strength. As a Jedi, we must cultivate mindfulness, and in so doing, we can begin to discern the difference between a reasoned, compassionate decision and one made from the cloud of emotion, even emotion that is based on good intentions. I often say that the path to the dark side is paved with good intentions. It is not enough to want to do good within our sphere of influence. We must cultivate the knowledge of how to do good. This means being able to anticipate the consequences of our actions. It is being able to accurately project these consequences that we can understand when kindness is the compassionate action and when the compassionate action may appear in the surface to be unkind. This is not to say that a Jedi can go around acting unkindly in all situations in the name of the greater good. There are a great number of times when kindness and compassion go hand in hand. One of the responsibilities of acting within our sphere of influence is recognizing that there are no one-size-fits-all solutions. Compassion has many ways in which it can be applied. To best know how to apply compassion to where it will do the most good, we rely on the pillars of the force, self-discipline, and knowledge. By applying the pillars, we can move from the realm of merely having good intentions to the sphere of good action. We recognize compassionate action by the consequences of that action. Sometimes the correctness of an action will be evident right away, and other times it may take a long time before we know with any certainty if we took the correct course of action. By practicing mindfulness, we can become more certain in our actions. However, we can never be absolutely certain. A Jedi must be comfortable in operating without absolute certainty. There comes a time when we stop waiting for all the planets to align and we take action in less than ideal situations, because waiting for favorable weather may allow suffering through our inaction. When we realize the necessity of our action, we cannot wait for other circumstances to be better. We must act and do the best we can. There will be times where it will be easier to discern the correct decision than others, and more likely than not, a mistake will be made along the way, where when we thought we were doing a compassionate action, that ultimately did not work out well and resulted in suffering. We must not allow ourselves to be defined by our mistakes, however, but instead by how we met them. Jedi, like all other human beings, are fallible. We will make mistakes, some small, some huge. However, if we accept that mistakes are going to be made, we do not have to spend an inordinate amount of time in self-recrimination. There is no need for emotional penance in the Jedi Path. Addressing and repairing mistakes, however, is a vital part of the Jedi Path. This work that happens at the center of our sphere of influence, that is, work on ourselves. The path of the Jedi is one of continuous self-improvement. Even when we do something well in the present, we should strive to become better at it in the future. If we are lacking in any respect, when we become aware of an addressable lack, we should take time to reflect on how we can overcome this lack and put what we come up with into action. When our actions cause harm, we address that when we can, and most importantly, we learn from it so that we do not make the same mistake again. It is when we persist in mistaken behavior that harm becomes magnified. There's a story from African American folklore that illustrates the concept. Uncle Remus tells us of a story where Brer Fox creates a contraption out of tar and turpentine that looks like a person. When Brer Rabbit mistook Brer Fox's contraption for a person, Brer Rabbit greeted the simulation, and this was his first mistake. Not getting a response from the contraption, he tried other greetings and yelling, repeating his first mistake. Enraged, he starts to attack Brer Fox's creation, another mistake, and each blow entraps him further, repeating the same mistake again. Soon, due to his actions, he is inextricably trapped and captured by Brer Fox. How many times have we found ourselves in a sticky situation due to not recognizing we are making a mistake and persisting and continuing our wrong actions? Recognizing we have made or are making a mistake is our first step to correcting it. Knowledge. When we then must do the work involved so as not to repeat the mistake. Self-discipline. We must be willing to have the kind of character to acknowledge mistakes, learn from them, and to be better in the future. The Force. Once again, the pillars of Jedi strength are the tools we use to live as a Jedi. This brings back to mind the last line of the Jedi Creed. Jedi seek to improve themselves through knowledge and training. It is when we make mistakes that where we are lacking is put into sharp relief, sometimes exposed for all to see. But more importantly, we are made aware of it. While the knowledge that we have made a mistake is important, even more so is being able to seek out the knowledge of how to correct it. When we train ourselves in such a way that what led to making the mistakes in the first place is eliminated. This is the real work of being a Jedi. If we are to be a positive influence in the world, we must improve ourselves to the point where we are a force for good within our sphere of influence. In this way, our improving ourselves does not just benefit us, but those around us, and in turn, those we influence can go on to be positive influences themselves. It becomes a cycle of positive intention within our sphere of influence. We find that it is not only the work we do, but also what we can inspire for others. The courage of compassion should be a light in the darkness, giving the gift of hope to those that have none. That's it for that chapter. So, 5 years on, I don't really have much more to add to this. I think this is kind of solid and one of the core aspects of being a Jedi, being a real life Jedi. Touches on the importance of training to get to where we want to be, or where we need to be if we're going to be a Jedi of quality. And it begins, okay, spoiler warning, some of the foundations of incorporating real social justice into our Jedi path. Taking the side of those who are oppressed or marginalized, instead of contributing to their oppression and marginalization, which a Jedi shouldn't do. And being neutral does exactly that. It's something I see in the Jedi community a lot. The idea that Jedi should be apolitical. And I think this is very wrong-headed. It comes from a place of privilege where when one says that they're non-political, that only means that their politics are implicit rather than explicit. And let's be honest, there are peoples whose very existence are politicized just for existing and moving about in the world. If you're serious about the goal of world betterment through self-betterment, the premise of being a Jedi in its simplest form, you would have to work for justice. It simply goes hand in hand, and I don't see a way that you can be a Jedi of quality where it doesn't. So, that's my thoughts. Compassion in the sphere of influence. Thank you for your support on this channel. Thank you to my subscribers for subscribing. I appreciate that support so much. I hope you'll stick with it for the rest of the series, though the topics are getting a little bit more difficult, and you're going to have to do that self-examination, that self-reflection, to see if this is the path for you. For some of you, I hope it is. And until our next video, may the Force be with you.